Well, this has been a hell of a year for Spider-Man. What's going on, guys? It's Will. So, what a year for Spider-Man. I mean, you've got a hell of a performance by Tom Holland in Avengers Infinity War, which, kind of ended badly for him. But he will be back. He will be back. He has this movie coming out next year. Then we had an amazing PlayStation 4 game, Spider-Man, which hands down for me is my game of the year. And then the fall hits, and then you had the Venom come out, which if you saw my review, you know my feelings on it, but I don't know how that happened. That was a rousing success for Sony, and Sony rounds out the year with Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, which is their animated Spider-Man film, completely standalone from live action, MCU. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse actually follows Miles Morales, who is the ultimate Spider-Man from the comics, which now is technically in the main Marvel comic universe as the main Spider-Man anyway. This one, I was initially skeptical, but the animation is what kind of drew me to the film to begin with. What a good movie. This was great. I loved it. Let's just start off basically with who Miles Morales is. He is a kid who got bit by a genetically altered spider. I wouldn't really call it radioactive, but he is the person who picks up the mantle for Spider-Man after Peter Parker and his universe dies. This movie really follows that story to a T, but it did something different and a little bit riskier. It showed multiple different spider characters, Spider-Men and women, throughout the multiverse of Marvel Comics. You had Peter Parker from 616, which is the main Marvel universe. You had Spider-Gwen, you had Spider-Man Noir, you had Spider-Ham, and I forget her name. I'm just going to put a picture of her right here. She was really cute. It was kind of like a manga style universe with a female spider person who best friend is a robot. Anyway, the cool thing about this movie to start with was the animation. Like I said, the animation is what really drew me to going to see this movie in the first place, and it looked gorgeous. There were times where I noticed it looked like parts of it were unfocused, but I think that was the style they were going with. It was literally a comic book coming to life, which looked beautiful. The animation, the art style, even the text boxes when someone was monologuing to themselves, popping up over the characters, they really embraced making a comic book come to life. And it's unique and it looks different. And in a world where we have so many different comic book movies coming out in one year, you've got to stand out from the pack. And I think this movie, combined with an amazing soundtrack, really set a unique tone for this film. It had a lot of heart. It had a lot of character development. The movie does focus on Miles Morales. He is starting at a new school and he basically feels out of place. He's not stupid. He's a very intelligent young man. And everything changes when he's bitten by this genetically altered spider and he runs into Spider-Man. And that's when the story goes completely 180 to what you would think the movie was going to go with. We're introduced to so many different Spider-Men from different parts of the multiverse. And I have to commend Sony for not treating their audience like they don't know. At this point, Spider-Man as a property has been done since 2000. Since around like the early 2000s. All the way back from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man. And at this point, if you're a moviegoer or if you've seen any of them, or you even briefly know the character of Spider-Man, you probably have experienced his origin story in one way or another, either through the comics or through television or through any of the 6 previous movies that have come before. I think Sony took what they learned from Spider-Man Homecoming and really applied it to this movie, being that we didn't focus on the origin story too much, even though the origin story for Miles is throughout the movie, is the origin of him becoming his universe's Spider-Man. The trials and tribulations and having to take a leap of faith or really believe in yourself that you can do this. You don't really know, it just happens. And one of the through lines of the entire movie was that anyone could wear the mask. To me, for a young person watching this movie, to hear something like that and to see someone on screen who looks like you, because we're so used to the Peter Parker character, which, let me get this out the way first and foremost. I am torn between which one of these, between Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, is the better movie. I think they're both fantastic movies. I would, for right now, I will edge Spider-Verse slightly higher than Homecoming. Slightly. It's so close for me. But being that Sony took a chance with the Miles Morales character, which a lot of fans of the comics were clamoring for Marvel to do when they were rebooting Spider-Man for the MCU, I'm glad that they stuck with Peter Parker, because now this gives Sony a chance to use Miles. And you can have two Spider-Man characters operating in two separate universes with potential for crossover, but being that this is animated and the Tom Holland Spider-Man is completely live action, that might be difficult to do. The biggest thing with Anyone Can Wear the Mask was kind of the through line of the entire movie, especially with Miles, being that he didn't really have a mentor in becoming Spider-Man by the end of the movie. It was really, he had some help from the other characters in the movie, but it really boiled down to him taking a leap of faith and realizing that he can do this. Another big point about the movie that I think really worked was that Sony was smart to not have to hold the audience's hand. I mean, we jumped right into a multiverse, introducing Spider-Man characters that most casual fans probably don't know. Like, Spider-Man Noir is a deep cut, and I didn't even get introduced to him until, I want to say Spider-Man Shattered Dimension was the old PS3 game. That's where I got introduced to him. Having him voiced by Nick Cage was completely fantastic. Spider-Gwen has just recently become super popular in the comics, and Spider-Ham, again, is a kind of a joke character, but it works for the movie. It gives the movie a little bit of something for everybody, which I think will help the mass appeal of the movie and give it a long run in the theaters. The action looked amazing. I thought the comedy in the movie worked. Like I said, there was a lot of heart in the movie. It really showed Miles's growth and realizing who he had to be. He couldn't just be trained by somebody. He needed to find his own identity, and I believe he does by the end of the movie, which really sets up a wonderful sequel going forward. There's really not a lot, I would say, negative about the movie. There are a multitude of villains in this movie. You have Kingpin, Scorpion, the Prowler, Green Goblin. There's a multitude of different villains in this movie that their motivations are kind of cliche to do bad things, except for Kingpin. Kingpin does have a legit motivation, but going about it the way he's going about it doesn't make sense from a logical standpoint. That's just me. Besides that point, this is Miles' story. This is his development into being Spider-Man, taking up the mantle for his universe as Peter Parker. And again, Anyone Can Wear the Mask, which is the best part of this movie, is that it really does drive home the fact is that regardless of your circumstance, because every character, every Spider-Man in this movie had the same origin. Doesn't matter who you are or where you came from, anyone can wear the mask. And I thought that was a beautifully done message that the movie delivered. I think Sony has a real winner with this. I think doing it in animation allows you to do set pieces and action stunts that you can't feasibly do in live action. And I think it was a smart move doing this in animation. And even smarter starting with Miles as this universe Spider-Man, but still integrating characters that some casual fans know. Whereas my feelings of the Venom movie, even though I loved Eddie and Venom's relationship in that movie, I'm not going to get too much into that movie, but even though I loved their relationship in the movie, that was nowhere near as strong of a movie as this is. I think if Sony was trying to do their own sort of cinematic universe, this was the best place to start for it. I think the direction was great. The pacing of the movie was really good. There was real stakes, and doing a movie that features a multiverse of characters like Spider-Man, there are so many different other characters that they have not touched on that we may see in sequels. That leaves the door open for so many different possibilities, so many different takes of the characters, without necessarily being shoehorned into one character going forward. Overall, this was a really fantastic movie. I loved it. I think Sony's got a real winner on their hands with this one. Spider-Verse, I really feel like it's going to do great. It's got great reviews from critics and fans. It's definitely going to get a sequel. I mean, 2 years ago, Sony was in the toilet, but then you have successes like Jumanji, and then successes like with Venom, and now with Spider-Verse. The question going around is that, well, does Sony need Marvel and Disney anymore at this point? My opinion is that it would be foolish for Sony to just cut ties with Marvel. For those of you that don't know, the reason Spider-Man is in the MCU, even though he is owned, technically, the live action rights are owned by Sony. There was a deal that was made a few years ago that allowed Sony and Marvel to have a working relationship and allowed Marvel Studios to feature the character of Peter Parker and Spider-Man in the MCU. That's why we got Tom Holland. That's why we got the rebooted Spider-Man Homecoming. That's why Spider-Man is part of the Avengers and whole 9 yards. Now that deal needs to be re-upped, and most likely it will. The reason I say it would be foolish for Sony to let go of the working relationship they have with Marvel is for 2 reasons. Number one, any standalone Spider-Man movie featuring Tom Holland, is all that money goes to Sony. The creative direction is led by Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige, but Sony still has creative control and they have the final say in whatever shows up on the screen. So, that being said, tying one of your characters into a very large and successful franchise like the Marvel Cinematic Universe brings other people over to see some of your other properties, even if they're not directly tied in. That being said, any success or any exposure that Tom Holland Spider-Man gets can only benefit Sony. So if Sony has already found success with not only Venom, but with Miles Morales leading the Spider-Verse, that's just win-wins for Sony, and I don't see Sony giving up that working relationship just yet. I think they will re-up. I think we will see more of Tom Holland and the MCU, and I think we will see more spin-offs and sequels to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. There you have it, guys. That is my review for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It is a fantastic Spider-Man movie, probably the best Spider-Man movie out there. This is so well done. Even if you're not a fan of animation, the animation is beautifully done in this movie. I highly recommend going to see it. Way to go, Sony. You've had one hell of a year, and look forward to seeing what else you're going to do. Well, there you have it, guys. Thank you so much for watching this and all of my videos on my channel. I appreciate it. It really means a lot to me. This is all for fun. I make no money off of this. I sneak these videos in when I can. If you do like this video, please click the little like button down below. And also, if you want to check out any of my other content, I will have links in the description of this video, as well as you can click on my nice little round face that's towards the bottom. That'll take you to the main channel, and you can subscribe for more. I try to get these out as soon as I can, when I can, but I try to get them out. We've got 2 more big movies coming out that I'm definitely going to see before the end of the year. Thank you so much for watching, as always. And till next time, catch you later.